Okay, so the Subaru XV has Subaru's all-wheel drive system. So what it does is, if it senses that one wheel is losing traction, it directs torque towards the other wheel.
So I will try it. Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Okay, just one more time.
Okay.
Good. Okay. See? That was easy peasy.
So you want a rugged crossover, maybe something that's all-wheel drive, something that you can take on an adventure. But you also want something that handles like a car, something that's well-behaved on public roads. And you also want something that has a lot of active safety features. This right here is the Subaru XV, and it ticks all of your boxes. It sells for 1.9 million pesos. Is it worth your money? Let's find out. The Subaru XV has been facelifted for the 2021 model year. The changes are mostly cosmetic. So here's a side-by-side comparison of the pre-facelift and the facelifted XV. Try to spot the differences. The Subaru XV, also known as the Crosstrek in the US, looks a bit more sleek compared to other Subaru crossovers. The front end almost looks like it belongs to a sedan. It kind of looks like a WRX at the front. It has these aggressive-looking squinty headlights. Both headlights are LEDs, and they're also both adaptive. So when you turn the wheel, the light also turns towards the direction that you're going. So like a lot of European cars, you get headlight washers. So this is something that's common in the US and Europe because headlights tend to get covered in snow, which is not an issue for us, unless you want to go off-roading. So the facelifted model has bulkier looking claddings, which make it look more rugged. It has LED fog lamps here. One more thing that's new on this model are the wheels. They're the same size, but they're a different design. They look chunkier. The lines on the side are sharp and they're very well defined, and they make the Subaru XV look more aggressive. Over here you have functional roof rails. They're not cosmetic, they're load bearing. So it may look like a lifted hatchback, but the Subaru XV has 220 millimeters of ground clearance. And more impressively, it has 500 millimeters of water wading depth. That's almost the same as a lot of pickups in the market. So pwede siyang ilusok sa baha. Here at the back you get Subaru signature C-shaped tail lamps. Down here you get more claddings, you get a full skid plate. It comes with a manual tailgate.
The Subaru XV doesn't have the best cargo capacity in its segment. So yeah, you have a pretty high flooring. So down here you have I believe you have a donut spare tire. So you have this cover, of course, which is removable. And you have a 60-40 split for the second row seats.
I think Chinese brands have spoiled us quite a bit. Crossovers like the Geely Coolray have premium looking interiors. And if you step into something like a Toyota, it just doesn't compare. At least here in the Philippines. Subaru though is a bit more premium of a brand compared to Toyota. And this interior, perhaps it doesn't look as flashy, but I think it still looks impressive. It still looks premium. You have leather on the dashboard. This is leather. The sidings are covered in leather. Almost everything is covered in soft touch materials, except for this right here. This huge chunk of plastic that is the center console. It's perhaps the least premium feeling part of the car. You also get these faux aluminum accents and faux carbon fiber accents, which add a bit of contrast to the interior. You have this chunky looking steering wheel. It's leather wrapped, and you have a lot of buttons on it. Actually, you have a lot of buttons in the car. Now, some people prefer minimalist designs. They don't like seeing a lot of buttons, a lot of clutter. But I actually prefer this design. I prefer having dedicated buttons over having to rely on the infotainment screen for everything, which seems to be the trend nowadays. I mean, you can't even adjust the climate control on the Ford territory without having to go through the screen. Speaking of screens, the Subaru XV has 3 screens over here. You have this 8-inch infotainment screen. It has Apple CarPlay, it has Android Auto. It also has a top-down camera. It doesn't look as fancy as the 360 cameras of the Coolray or the Ford territory, but it does the job. I think it's just as usable. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of this 2D looking top-down view of the car though. Over here you have another screen. This displays your climate control settings, a couple of gauges, your fuel consumption, your eyesight settings. And this screen over here displays your odometer, your trip meter, your adaptive cruise control settings, and everything is configurable. Now I like the setup because you don't clutter your infotainment screen. You can segregate your displays. Like for example, you can view your climate control settings, you can view your fuel consumption, while also using Waze at the same time. You don't have to flip through screens. I like how everything's laid out. Everything is easily within reach. And I like the fact that it has knobs instead of buttons for the volume control, the tuning, and also the climate control. One, they're easier to operate without having to look at them. And number 2, it's just faster.
So you have one USB port over there, and you have 2 over here. You have one 12-volt outlet over here, and another one over here. So you have 3 USB ports and 2 12-volt outlets. The seats are leather wrapped and they're very nicely sculpted. The driver's seat is power adjustable. The passenger seat is manually adjustable. And you also get a sunroof here. It's not panoramic though, like on a lot of Chinese crossovers. Okay, so here at the back seat, you don't really get a lot of toys. The people at the front get all the USB ports and the 12-volt outlets. You don't get anything here. You also don't get air vents. But the XV is small enough that you don't really need them. I can feel the air coming from the front air vents. So the front seat is adjusted to my height, and I have about, I'm guessing that's 6 inches of legroom. I'm 5'8". Headroom is just okay. I have about an inch or an inch and a half. So over here you get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Also, the materials here are a bit harder. This is hard plastic, unlike this, which is soft padded.
So overall, it's not a very flashy looking interior. It looks classy though, and I think to some people that's more important than flashy.
The Subaru XV has eyesight, which is Subaru's suite of active safety features. It has adaptive cruise control, which I have turned on right now.
In 200 meters, keep left.
So my feet are not doing anything. Not sure if you can see that, but the vehicle is automatically speeding up and slowing down on its own. So over there, you'll see if the eyesight detects the vehicle in front of you. So over here are your adaptive cruise settings. You can adjust the speed. Like currently it's at 45. We can set it to 50. And you can also adjust the distance of the car in front of you. So unlike the adaptive cruise control of the Ford territory, which is radar based, the adaptive cruise here is camera based. You have cameras up here. So the advantage of this is that it's not exposed to the elements, so it's not gonna get covered in mud. My feet are not doing anything and we're slowing down. You also get blind spot warning, and you also get lane departure warning. The vehicle also has automatic emergency braking, so even if you don't have adaptive cruise turned on, if the vehicle detects an impending collision, it will automatically apply the brakes. And I was able to test this. I was backing out from my driveway, and there was a motorcycle parked behind me, which I couldn't see, and the vehicle automatically applied the brakes, and I avoided a collision. Yeah, so far I have not stepped on the brakes or the gas, and we're still moving.
The Subaru XV has a naturally aspirated 2-liter boxer engine. It produces 156 horsepower and 196 Newton meters of torque. It's not fast, but it's not slow either. While it may not be the fastest compact crossover out there, it is still quite fun to drive on windy roads. One advantage of the XV over taller crossovers like the Forester is that it handles a lot better on paved roads. There's not a lot of body roll, and you don't get that side-to-side whiplash that you get on taller crossovers when you're changing directions quickly. So it's almost like you're driving a car. Subaru has a torque vectoring system, which automatically applies the brakes on the inner wheel if you're turning. The result is that it feels agile. It feels like you're driving a car that has a shorter wheelbase. And also, because it's all-wheel drive, you can make it rotate a bit in the corners when you're stepping on the gas. NVH levels are okay, although I'd say it's not the best in the segment. There were times when I thought one of the windows was open because a bit of exterior noise enters the cabin. Don't get me wrong, it's not noisy in the cabin, but compared to crossovers like the Geely Okavango and the Ford Territory, it's just not as quiet. Ride quality is very good. When you drive over potholes, you never feel like you're crashing into them. It always feels well cushioned. Because this is all-wheel drive and it has a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine, fuel consumption is not the best in the segment. In heavy traffic, I got around 6.5 kpl. In moderate traffic, I could do 8 kpl. But on the highway, it can be quite fuel efficient. At moderate speeds, it can do up to 17 kpl. Okay, so we decided to take the Subaru XV to a camping trip in Rizal. Now, the road going there was a bit unpaved. Yeah, that's putting it lightly, because it's practically a mud trail. So on the way in, a couple of tricycles advised us not to proceed because they thought I was driving a small car. What they didn't know was that this is a Subaru, and it's practically a rally car. So the trail was very easy for the Subaru XV. There was never a point where I was worried that we would get stuck. It handled mud and clay with no problems at all, which is actually quite comical since a lot of SUVs and pickups were getting stuck. Oh shit, what the hell? And there we were in this little crossover, having fun playing around in the mud.
Okay, so the Subaru XV has Subaru's all-wheel drive system. So what it does is, if it senses that one wheel is losing traction, it directs torque towards the other wheel.
So I will try it. Okay.
Okay, just one more time.
Okay.
Ano tayo tumama dun? Okay. See? That was easy peasy.
Okay.
So like I said before, the Subaru XV has a very sophisticated traction control system. So when it senses that one wheel is spinning, it directs torque towards the other wheel. And it does that by applying the brakes on the wheel that's spinning. And you can see that in this video. So you can see the front right wheel and the left rear wheel are both spinning for a while until the brakes transfer the torque to the opposite wheels. So one appeal of vehicles like this that I think not a lot of people see right away is that it allows you access to places like this. And it adds another element to your ownership of a vehicle. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's also about exploring new places. Here in the Philippines, we have a lot of beautiful places that are not usually accessible to regular cars. And the Subaru XV not just offers you a means of transportation, it also offers you a lifestyle.
Okay, at 1.9 million pesos, the Subaru XV is significantly more expensive than other compact crossovers. It's almost 600,000 pesos more expensive than the Ford Territory, which also has active safety features like adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking. What the Subaru XV offers though is a very capable all-wheel drive system, and that's something that you can't get on the Ford Territory, the Geely Coolray, or any of these other more affordable crossovers. 1.9 million pesos may seem steep, but the Subaru XV is designed for a certain demographic. And if you're that demographic, if you like treading on unbeaten paths, then you might find the 1.9 million peso price tag reasonable.